Stop right there and put that bucket down. Before you throw those cold gray ashes into the trash, I want you to look at them with different eyes. All winter long, we burn wood to keep our homes warm. We clean out the stove, we sweep out the fireplace, and almost everybody makes the same mistake. They carry the ash outside, tip the bucket over the bin, and throw away something that old gardeners treated like treasure. What looks like a pile of dust is actually one of the most powerful free fertilizers you will ever have your hands on. In the next few minutes, I want to show you why this dull gray powder can completely change the way your soil behaves, how your plants grow, and how your harvest tastes. I also want to warn you about the very real danger of using it the wrong way, because wood ash is not a toy. Handle it with respect, and it will feed your garden for years. Use it blindly, and it can burn tender plants, ruin the balance of your soil, and wipe out an entire season in a single afternoon. Our grandfathers and great-grandfathers understood this. When they cleaned the hearth, they did not see waste. They saw lime. They saw potash. They saw the minerals that trees had pulled up from deep underground over decades, all concentrated in a bucket that cost them exactly zero money. While we are busy buying bags of chemical fertilizer and bright plastic, the old wisdom is sitting quietly in the ash pan under the fire. So do not throw it away. Keep watching, and I will show you the one old trick that lets you turn this ash into gentle food for your soil, not an enemy. Once you understand what is hiding inside this gray dust, you will never look at your fireplace the same way again. You will start seeing a full bucket of ash as a full bucket of opportunity and a way to step away from store-bought fertilizers and back toward a closed, self-supporting garden system where nothing valuable gets wasted. To understand why ash is so powerful, we need to go back to basics and think about what fire actually does. A living tree is mostly water, carbon, and a little bit of nitrogen. When you burn wood, the water boils away into steam, the carbon and nitrogen go up the chimney as gases and smoke, and what is left behind in the stove is the skeleton of the tree in mineral form. All the elements that do not burn easily stay in that soft gray powder. A big part of that is calcium carbonate, the same substance that you get when you buy garden lime to sweeten sour soil. In fact, many tests show that wood ash can be 25 to 40% calcium compounds. That is why gardeners who spread ash on acidic ground often notice that their soil becomes more friendly to most vegetables. The pH slowly moves up, worms come closer to the surface, and locked-up nutrients start to become available again. But calcium is only part of the story. Inside that ash, there is also a surprising amount of potassium, the element that old farmers used to call potash because they made it by leaching water through pots full of wood ash. The word potash literally comes from pot and ash. Potassium is like a health signal for plants. It helps them move water in and out of their cells, it strengthens the walls of stems, it supports flowering, and it plays a big role in how sweet and full-flavored fruits and roots become. When you see a heavy tomato vine loaded with firm red fruit that does not crack at the first sign of rain, you are looking at a plant that has enough potassium. When you see sturdy brassicas standing up to wind and cold, that is potassium at work as well. Alongside calcium and potassium, you also get small but important amounts of magnesium, phosphorus, and trace elements like iron, zinc, and manganese. In other words, a tree spends decades mining the subsoil for minerals, locking them into its wood. When you burn that wood, those minerals fall down as ash. When you throw the ash away, you are literally throwing decades of slow, natural fertilizer mining into the garbage. Instead, you could be returning those minerals to your garden beds, closing the loop between tree, fire, soil, and food. This is why old homesteads almost always had an ash pile near the garden. It was not just a place to dump waste. It was a simple, free way to keep their soil rich without ever walking into a store.
However, before you rush outside and start throwing ash across every bed you have, there is a serious warning. Wood ash is powerful because it is concentrated, and that means it can cause a lot of damage if you put it in the wrong place or use too much at once. Fresh ash is very alkaline. If you mix it with water, you are close to making lye, the same corrosive substance that people once used to make hard soap and to strip hair from hides. If you heap fresh ash in one spot and then plant tender seedlings right on top of it, the roots may burn. The cells in the plant can lose water to the salty, caustic environment around them and collapse. Leaves can turn brown from the edges inward. Growth can stall, and the plant may simply die. That is why the first rule of using wood ash is simple. Never pile, always dust. You also need to remember that not all plants want their soil sweeter. Some species truly prefer life on the sour side. Blueberries are a classic example. They evolved in naturally acidic environments. They need that sour soil to draw in iron and other nutrients. If you spread wood ash around your blueberries, you will see their leaves turn pale and yellow, a sign that they can no longer take in what they need from the ground. Azaleas, rhododendrons, camellias, and other acid lovers belong on that same do not ash list. Another important warning is for potatoes. Many gardeners have heard that potatoes like a little bit of acidity, and that is true. When you raise the pH of potato soil too much, you create perfect conditions for a disease called common scab. It leaves ugly, rough patches and corky spots on the skins of your tubers. The potatoes might still be edible, but they look terrible and do not store as well. If you spread a lot of ash on the plot where you plan to grow potatoes next spring, you greatly increase the risk of scab, so keep potatoes and ash apart. Also be careful if your soil is already naturally alkaline or rich in calcium. In those situations, adding more ash could push the pH too high, locking out nutrients instead of releasing them. If you're not sure what your soil is like, you can use a simple pH test kit. They're cheap and easy to use. A few minutes of testing can tell you whether ash will help or harm. Respect those numbers. It is far easier to add a bit of ash each year than to fix a garden that has been overloaded with it. Once you understand the risks, you are ready for the old method that lets you use wood ash safely and effectively. It starts with purity. Only use ash from clean, untreated wood. Logs, branches, and brush from your own property are perfect. Avoid ash from painted boards, plywood, particle board, or any lumber that may have been treated with chemicals. Avoid ash from coal or from most charcoal briquettes, especially the ones that have lighter fluid or binders in them. Those ashes can contain heavy metals and residues that you do not want anywhere near your food. After you have clean ash, let it cool completely and store it in a dry metal container with a lid so it does not absorb moisture from the air. When you are ready to use it, pour the ash through a simple screen or old sieve to remove nails, half-burned chunks of charcoal, and big clumps. What you want is a fine, almost silky dust. This makes it easier to spread evenly. The best time to deliver that dust to your soil is late winter or very early spring, while the beds are still empty. Pick the areas where you grow vegetables that like a neutral to slightly acidic soil, such as cabbages, beets, carrots, onions, beans, and many ornamentals. Stand back from the bed and sprinkle the ash by hand in a very thin layer, almost like you are shaking sugar over a cake. You should still see soil between the ash grains. If you make a solid white blanket, you are using too much. A rough guide is that 1 medium bucket of ash is enough for a very large bed, not for a small patch. After you have dusted the surface, take a rake and gently pull the top inch of soil back and forth so the ash mixes in. Over the next weeks, rain and melting snow will help carry those minerals deeper into the ground, so that by the time you plant, the ash is no longer harsh and caustic, but has mellowed into a softer, more even presence in the root zone. Another beautiful old trick is to add ash in thin layers to your compost heap. Alternate kitchen scraps and garden waste with light dustings of ash.
This helps neutralize strong acids in the pile and feeds potassium and calcium straight into the compost. By the time that compost is ready, the ash will be fully blended and much gentler. You can also use small amounts of ash in paths or around the edges of beds to discourage moss on very damp, sour ground. Always think in terms of light, repeated doses instead of big, dramatic dumps. This is slow medicine for your soil, not instant magic dust.
There is one more way to put wood ash to work for you, not as a fertilizer, but as a simple physical barrier. Many gardeners fight an endless battle with slugs and snails, especially in cool, wet seasons. These soft-bodied creatures hate crossing dry, sharp, salty surfaces. A thin ring of ash around young lettuce, cabbage, or other tender plants can make them think twice about paying a nighttime visit. You simply sprinkle a band of dry ash in a circle around the plant, wide enough that a slug cannot easily bridge it with one stretch of its body. When the pest tries to cross, the ash sticks to its skin, drawing moisture out and making the journey painful. Most of them will turn around and go searching for easier food. The catch is that this barrier only works while the ash is dry. One rain or a heavy dew will wash it into the soil and the ring will disappear, so you need to renew it when the weather clears. Still, as part of a wider strategy, it can save a lot of seedlings without using commercial pellets. When you start looking at ash this way, as something that can both feed and protect your garden, the old cycle begins to make sense. The tree grows on your land, pulling up nutrients you could never reach with a shovel. You cut and burn the wood to keep warm through winter. The fire concentrates those minerals into ash. You collect it instead of throwing it away, and you return measured amounts to the soil and the compost. In time, the plants that grow in that enriched soil feed you and your family, and the parts you do not eat go back to the compost heap. Nothing is wasted. This is how people kept gardens productive long before anyone sold blue crystals in plastic sacks. So the next time you clean out your stove, do not think of that gray dust as dirt. Think of it as the quiet memory of the tree, waiting to be given back to the ground. Keep a bucket just for ash, keep it dry, use it with care and understanding, and it will serve you faithfully year after year. If you want to revive more of these forgotten methods and replace store-bought products with old, proven tricks, stay with this channel. There are many more secrets like this hidden in the stories of our grandparents and in the habits of small farms that never had much money but always had good soil. For now, do one simple thing. Stop throwing wood ash away. Treat it like the garden gold it truly is, and let your soil show you the difference in the seasons to come.